welcome you all on the call. Today we are pleased to have the Evergreen Retirement Community. Belinda and her team will be talking about decision-making resident care. All of you that joined on the call, I do have you, welcome you all on the call. Today we are pleased to have the Evergreen Retirement Community. Belinda and her team will be talking about decision-making resident care. All of you that joined on the call, I do have you muted to keep the noise and the background noise down. There is a chat feature here on Zoom. If you go to the bottom of your screen and click on chat, if you have questions for the team, you can type your questions in there, and then I will pass them on to Belinda and her team. Or another way that doesn't work for you, you can submit questions by our Gmail email account, ksucoa@gmail.com, and we can also get comments or questions through that as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Belinda and her team.
Be talking about today, and it has I'll introduce ourselves, but I'm the director of GERTI, which is the education branch I do education for our staff and also out in the external community. So I'll let the rest of the team introduce them in the external community. Themselves.
Good morning, I'm Kendra Ojwang. I am the Assistant Director of Health at Evergreen Community, the nursing center associated with Evergreen Living Innovations.
Hello, I'm Randy Sprinkle, and I am the Director of Health.
Gray, I am the Director of Quality of Life here at Evergreen Community.
Hello, I'm Kristen Sprouse, and I'm the Director of Nutrition, the dietitian here at Evergreen.
So, as I said, Evergreen is part of our 3 branches, and Evergreen is a 112 bed nursing home located in Olathe, and we have 4 neighborhoods of 28 residents in each neighborhood, and currently today we are nearly full, so things are going well. We are a not-for-profit and currently serve about 80% Medicaid. So we're going to go into our peak involvement, and we've had quite a bit of peak involvement. Eric will talk about that.
Yeah, so we have been a part of the peak program. Looks like the first time we were awarded was in 2008, and then 2010 mentor home since 2012. And with that peak mentor, so that's the highest level you can be at. And we have other communities that come here for the afternoon and shadow us, ask us questions. We provide resources. And so they can ask us questions. We provide resources. And so they can see it firsthand that we really do, we're preaching it and living it all at the same time. So we started the journey in 2003 with culture change. As you can see, 2003 to 2016, there's a lot of time in between, and it has taken time to get to where we're at now. So it is no quick journey, and it's a never-ending journey. So we're always working towards what we can do to better our environment and the lives of our residents.
So next I want to talk about with decision making with resident care. One of the places that we start with is our move-in coordinator from the beginning, before someone even moves in, is talking to families about our philosophy and the fact that we do honor choice, and that we're not going to force anyone to eat like a certain diet, or if there's decisions they want to make that are risky, we're going to honor that. that. And sometimes families don't move in, but we want to make sure on the front side that they're aware of how we do things. So also things that are really important with decision-making and resident care are consistent assignment and staff empowerment, and how we train people for staff empowerment, and actually our philosophy altogether. We do 2 days of general orientation, and then we also do 2 days of in-class time with Gertie. That's when we're really talking about resident choice and staff empowerment and what that means, and leadership and risk-taking, how we support each other when we're taking risks. So
we can break it down into a few of the different areas that we let our residents make choices. We can start with diets and how we let our residents. Make choices regarding their diets.
At Evergreen, everybody moves in on a regular and tolerated diet. So we have liberalized diets here. And part of that entails that when residents go to times, they come back with thickened liquids, orders for thickened liquids, ordered for puree. But our doctor is on board with us. So regardless of that diet order coming from the hospital, everyone still remains with a regular tolerated diet. And we care plan and we educate our staff. We give that choice to the resident. We say, you know, do you want thickened liquids? It's your choice. You can try it. You can have it if you want. If you feel safest, then we allow that. But we still just go ahead and care plan, keep their diet as regular as tolerated, and care plan based on that so that they still have the choice to choose.
Standard practices actually support this. They say that there's no higher or no less risk for someone using or drinking thickened liquids and eating a puree diet of aspiration as eating regular liquids. And actually you have a higher risk of weight loss, depression, multiple other drinking thickened liquids and eating a puree diet of aspiration as eating regular liquids. And actually you have a higher risk of weight loss, depression, multiple other areas by restricting what they're taking in.
So we honor that, prefer to have pureed meats, but yet they like to have all the other items on their plate be regular. And we just care plan that based on what they decide to have. A lot of times our biggest struggle with this is families. A lot of families get really nervous if their loved ones come back from the hospital with an order for thick times. Our biggest struggle with this is families. A lot of families get really nervous if their loved ones come back from the hospital with an order for thickened liquids and the resident chooses to have thin. They feel, you know, really uncomfortable with that. The doctor says that they should have the thickened. They're going to aspirate, and the family members, making sure they understand that, you know, it is the resident's choice. You know, risk and benefits, you know, if they're not wanting the thickened liquids, then we run the risk of dehydration. We run all those other kinds of risks, and we just make sure the families are on board with that and understand.
Or a feeding tube.
Yeah.
Sorry. They are still able to make that decision if they eat or not. That is probably one of the biggest struggles nursing-wise. Nurses are taught that if you let someone that's at high risk for aspiration needs a tube feeding, eat, they will die. Well, we actually had this scenario in our building. We did a lot of time discussing it. The woman began eating. She had her G-tube removed, and she did pass away a couple years later, but she did not die from aspiration pneumonia and was not hospitalized.
Yeah, so we, and then when it comes to dining as well, we have open dining. So residents have the choice, you know, when they want to come to the dining room and eat, what they want to eat. We offer a main and an alternate, and then we have our always available menu. Alternate, and then we have our always available menu, and snacks and things like that. We offer breakfast preferences. Breakfast is made to order, so residents come to the dining room. There's like Belinda said, there's 4 neighborhoods, which means there's rooms, and within those, there's 4 kitchens with homemakers that know those residents, know their preferences well. So, for instance, in the morning, you know, some may want eggs over easy, and somebody may want pancakes and waffles, and we do whatever we can to meet those preferences and choices. Alcohol is another hot topic when it comes to dietary. Everyone, we have orders for everyone to have alcohol. We offer 2 beverages per day, and then we just ask that families or the resident is able to supply if they want more, and that's just more of a cost issue. Residents, that's a hard thing for some families and residents, you know, if they've had maybe a history of alcoholism, maybe liver failure, things like that. We educate the resident, you know, yeah, you're at risk, you have liver failure, and may not be, you know, in your best benefit to drink alcohol. We provide that kind of education, but we still allow them the choice. We have happy hours once a month that we offer a signature cocktail, beer. We offer a signature cocktail, beer. Last time we did a martini. What did we do last time? It was Halloween.
Spiked Shirley.
So yes, we did a spiked Shirley Temple last month. And we offer lots of food. Is very prevalent at Evergreen. We always have snacks and food available at all of our events, activities. There's always homemade goods available for the residents to access on their own. Beverage areas, so we have water dispensers, we have Coke machines, and we encourage the residents to meet their preferences. We do food preference surveys that help us understand what our residents prefer, and so that we're able to better meet their needs and their wants.
Yeah, those food preferences we do when the resident moves in, and then we do them annually thereafter. And the staff on the neighborhood are actually the ones that are doing that because they know the resident best. So they're really involved and empowered to make sure that the resident gets what it is that they want. And that's all across the board, whether they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and want a cheeseburger and a milkshake, it is that they want. And that's all across the board, whether they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and want a cheeseburger and a milkshake. They're cross-trained and they're empowered to go in the kitchen and make that for the resident just as they would if they were at their home.
Yeah, and with that, to our homemakers, everyone has provided that education so that we can all that's a part of our universal worker, so that everybody can go in and make a cheeseburger, make a milkshake, make something and have the safe handling education so that we can all help in and pitch in, and everybody can go in and make a cheeseburger, make a milkshake, make something and have the safe handling education so that we can all help in and pitch in and answer call lights if somebody, you know, has their call light on, and that way anybody can go in and make something and help out each other when it comes to.
And that's throughout. I mean, with staff empowerment, when we're talking about leadership, when we're talking about risk-taking, education is huge, and that's something that we take very seriously here. That's why we have the Gertie branch. That's why it was started. It was really so that we'd have that part that we could, you know, really cover, making sure that people are educated, because we do have homemakers, so not coming from the kitchen. So, you know, we can't just throw people in to suddenly feel like, okay, here you're going to suddenly cook and understand how to do that. We have to educate people. So we do have versatile workers, so people are doing everything up to the level of certification. So education is huge. And one of the things that we were going to talk about is how our care partners, which are CNAs and CMAs, how they have access to information about residents and how they're getting information back to nursing, so that we understand how we can care for them. And I believe a care plan was sent out, a copy of our care plan, and that's what our care partners use. That's the information they have to see, you know, what's been going on with them, and then if there are changes throughout the day, if they learn something really neat about the resident, that's how they are communicating that. So you guys could also talk about how they access transportation and resident funds after, how they access transportation and resident funds after hours.
Okay. Resident funds, during office hours, we have a billing office, and the residents are able to come and get money as they please from their trust accounts. After hours and on weekends, we keep one neighborhood in a lockbox, and in the lockbox, it has a list of all the residents' trust funds, so we can make sure that they do have the funds, or if it's something that we're going to pay for. They're able to get that anytime. That even goes as far as if a resident is wanting a cheeseburger, at 9 o'clock, the staff are empowered to go to obviously talk to their supervisor, but to ultimately go and get that for the resident. There have been times where we kind of have to limit, so we're not doing personal errands all day long, but still making sure that we are meeting resident choice. As far as transportation,
We have multiple employees that are able to drive our bus or our van, which you can take 2 residents in. There are multiple weekday, weekend. They're care partners, nurses, anyone that is able to get on our insurance is able to drive the van then.
and the possibilities with that are really endless. We're getting ready to take a resident. She wants her ears pierced. And so Kendra's actually getting ready to take her resident. She wants her ears pierced. And so Kendra's actually getting ready to take her to go get her ears pierced. We had a resident who just needed to run to the bank to take care of some financials, and we had a staff member take her to the bank. We had a resident that wanted a tattoo, organize that, and then her and myself actually ended up going and getting tattoos together one random Thursday afternoon. So the possibilities are really endless as far as what the resident is wanting and finding the way to make it happen.
There are just so many stories. There are just so many stories about some amazing things that have happened that, the resident says that they've wanted something and suddenly it happens. And one of my favorite stories is when one of the residents said she wanted a police officer to come, and one of the nurses heard it and, made a call to the Olathe Police Department, and suddenly we had a police officer show up, and we have pictures of her, and she was pretty darn happy with that. So another way that our care partners are able to share information is that they're also involved with care plan meetings, because that's, again, we're empowering them to make decisions and also give us information on.
And neighborhood meetings are really what give the teams a voice, and those are interdisciplinary meetings. So all across the board, we have people from different departments and different aspects of care really sharing input along. I have a concern with this resident in brainstorming ideas of how to better help the resident. And we do that with twice a week, because we have a weekday team and a weekend team. And we also do learning circles at that time. Learning circles is a great way to, we also do learning circles at that time. Learning circles is a great way to help empower staff to have a voice, because we do have everyone share. If you don't want to share it first, we'll skip you, but ultimately we will come back to you to share and is talking at a time. So you don't have to worry about someone else talking over you. If maybe you have a quiet voice or a little bit more shy, it still gives you that opportunity to share.
Another way that we work together to make sure our mission is continued is that we have a culture change committee, and we meet once a month, and working on right now getting that even as a larger group so that we have all of the different shifts and neighborhoods represented there. And so we're working on goals and seeing how we can see those things through along with education, so we can get to our goals.
And these meetings, these neighborhood meetings, these culture change committee meetings are an opportunity for us to continue to provide education to the staff here, because it's never easy to accept someone making a risky choice. Everyone loves everyone that works here or that lives here, works here. We don't want them to make bad decisions, but at the end of the day, we want them to make their own decisions. So that's a continued education for everyone. We have to continue to say, is it that I don't want them to do it or they don't want to do it? That I don't want them to do it or they don't want to do it?
You want to share a little bit about like a liberalized med pass? That's something that is a good one to.
So our med passes are liberalized because we have no wake up schedule and everyone's scheduled times for meds. So morning meds are usually done between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. And then the afternoon meds, you know, from 11 to 3 to 5 evening, and then bedtime meds are at hour of sleep. So when they actually go to bed, the residents are able to choose, do they want to take those medications at all? Do they want to take them now? When do they want to take them? The key to liberalized med pass is making sure there's communication, because if you have someone on a medication 3 times a day and they don't get their morning meds until noon, you want to make sure that gets communicated so that the noon meds aren't given then at noon too.
So one of the things too that I think is really different here is our schedule. You know, during especially the Monday through Thursday group, they really have a lot of overlap. So it does allow a lot of time. So the staff really is talking to each other and you know, doing huddles and talking about what came up that day and things that have changed and things like that. So I think our schedule is really conducive to staff empowerment and communication and things like that.
When a resident moves into Evergreen, something we do within the first 5 days, we even try to do it within the first 48 hours, is we call them social service assessments. So the first one is a way of life preference. And with that, we want to know wherever they are coming from. We like to say that the only thing that should change is their address, but the routine should stay the exact same. So we ask when they wake up, when they go to bed, what their nightly routine is, activity preference, how they want to celebrate holidays, their birthday, really how they want to celebrate holidays, their birthday, really all across the board. And that's, again, something we do when they move in, and then we do it annually thereafter or with any significant change. So if we notice something's changing, you know, we might use that assessment as a tool to find out what's going on. And again, that's something that the care partners on the neighborhood do, because they're really who get to know the resident the best. And that way they're empowered to make sure that their care plan matches what the resident's preferences are. We had talked a little bit about letting them make their choice. That's, again, one of those things that families are kind of like, you know, mom needs to wake up at 6 o'clock because she needs to eat by 7 and she needs to be stimulated. Well, I can tell you that if I get woken up before I'm ready, I'm probably not the most friendly person. So we do natural awakening, or we know that their preference is to wake up at 9 o'clock. And the important thing is just to make sure that we're honoring it, because ultimately you're going to have the best outcomes because of letting the resident make their choice. And it's not only about staff empowerment, but it's really about resident empowerment and helping them be as independent as possible and letting their resident make their choice. And it's not only about staff empowerment, but it's really about resident empowerment and helping them be as independent as possible and you know, making their life meaningful. If someone's going to be telling me how to live my life, then why do I really even want to live it? And finding out something that's purposeful for the person, not just something that's going to make them, you know, like a busy task, but something that's going to bring them joy.
One other thing that I think is kind of levels the playing field is that we don't wear scrubs. And I've seen, as I'm walking through the community, when people are more relaxed, and I've heard other communities talk about how they have certain scrubs for, and so we're all on the same playing field. I feel like when there aren't any scrubs, and a lot of times we'll see jeans and their evergreen shirts, and it just really, I think, contributes to the team environment, and just seems more relaxed. And, I remember the first couple of days, I was just so impressed with how people just, I don't know, by no scrubs. Certainly it's less institutional-like, but I think just creates a great environment.
Belinda, could you and your team talk about what you do when, what you train staff to do when a resident does make a risky decision? What you do when, what you train staff to do when a resident does make a risky decision? What your training is and what are the steps that you go through?
Yeah, well, we talk about during orientation and during the classes, we talk about that our responsibility, but we're going to honor whatever it is that you want to do after we've educated. And so that's just something that's ongoing throughout while you work here. And sometimes it's hard, and that's why we have some of our interdisciplinary team meetings where we're discussing, and the culture change committee meeting, and we're throughout while you work here. And sometimes it's hard, and that's why we have some of our interdisciplinary team meetings where we're discussing, and the culture change committee meeting, and we're discussing the risks that we want to take. And then we have to educate staff on, here's why we want to take this risk, because sometimes it's hard, especially clinical staff, and just continue. I mean, it's ongoing education on the part of the community.
Yeah, I was going to provide an example. Recently, we had a resident come back he had aspiration pneumonia, and he had orders for pureed and thickened liquids. So everyone was aware that that's what was happening. Met with him and discussed with him, okay, so the doctor, recommended this. Do you want to do thickened liquids? Do you want to do thin liquids? And he was thinking, oh yeah, I want to do thickened liquids. That's what I want to do. But I reminded him he has a choice, so he doesn't need to ask permission to have thin liquids. He doesn't need to ask the nurse, can I have thin liquids? He can make that choice. Throughout the day, he can decide if he wants to have thin liquids or thickened liquids. And so I just communicated that with the neighborhood, make sure that everybody was aware. Yeah, he did come back, after being a scary thing, but just reminding them, he does have the choice. He decided that he may have thickened liquids sometimes and he may have thin liquids sometimes, but I think just making sure that the team is aware, the team is educated, everybody's being communicated on what's going on, and just being more aware that that may be a risky decision that he's going to make, and just reminding them that, hey, remember, he has the choice. He doesn't need to be told, you were told to have thickened liquids. We just remind him that that's a choice, and remind the staff that that's a choice. Just keeping communication lines open, and just providing people, if there is potential risky decision that they're going to make, just make sure that everybody's aware of it and knows that choice is still trumps everything.
So during our education, we talk a lot about that we all make risky decisions. When I'm out speaking out in other communities, I talk about the fact that on my way there, I made risky decisions. I probably was speeding. So we talk about that in everyday life. We all make risky decisions, and just because someone has moved into a nursing home doesn't mean they.
And we really start before the resident even moves in. Justine and Peter really do most of our tours, but that's something that we really make sure and discuss, and that the family's on board with before even moving in here. We let them know up front what our philosophy, respect the resident's choice. And that even goes for residents that have dementia. They're still able to make that choice. They're still able to show us what choices, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. So we make sure that we talk about it before the resident moves in. Then when they move in, we do move-in paperwork that talk resident choice and offering different scenarios. And then in orientation, we have so many different aspects of orientation where at that time we educate our staff on how they can then educate the resident or the family when something comes up, educate the resident or the family when something comes up, and they're there, that we do honor the resident's choice. And again, we always reiterate education and educate why it's not a good decision, but ultimately, like Belinda said, we are able to make those. Just because you move to a nursing home doesn't mean that you're no longer able to make those risky decisions. And I think we also have a great aspect of Evergreen is we have a life and health coach for each neighborhood. So a life coach is the social worker and activity director, and the health coach is a nurse manager, whether it's MDS, an MDS, QA, staffing, whatever their focus may be. They're on the neighborhood, so, and it's a smaller, so it's one health and life coach for 28 residents. So they're really there to help. The staff with education and with needs that come up, and really getting to know the residents inside and out of what their wants and needs are, and being able to be a tool used when.
Well, if you're on the call and have questions, now would be a good time to send them to us by chat. I have a question here. Just, can you tell us about the documentation that it takes when you go through this process? With families and residents.
So documentation is always key in anything in nursing. It's not documented, it's not done. So the documentation, if it's out of nowhere, that's not a typical decision for them. The nurses know that they provide the education, they do the documentation and the progress notes. If this is something that we know is going to be consistently the case, we know that they don't want thickened liquids, that they know they could aspirate without them, then we care plan that. That way the nurses don't have to document every time they drink thin liquids and education each time. So we would educate with their MDS cycle. So every quarter, Kristen would meet with them and say, you know, there's a recommendation for you to have thickened liquids. However, it's still your choice. You know, you're at risk for aspirating if you have thin. And then again, we would update the care plan if needed, and if not, go from there with it.
Okay. You gave us an example of a person coming from the hospital, but do you have an example of when the first contact with that rescue decision is a direct care staff, and what you expect them to do and what are they trained to do at that time?
I'm confused on that. Can you repeat that?
When a direct caregiver is approached by a resident with a risky decision, can you give us an example of how they are trained and expected to respond?
I think this last week we talked about how I can remember in my nursing career before Evergreen, even as a CNA, having to ask my nurse if someone with diabetes could please have that piece of cake or please have the frosting on the piece of cake because they were asking for it. In our direct care staff here, are not going to ask or say anything typically. If it's excessive, like they know they have diabetes, their blood sugar has been running high, and they have 3 pieces of cake or maybe a whole pie, they may then say, hey, you know, Betty had a whole pie today, her blood sugar may be crazy, but a lot of times they don't even question a risky decision unless it's something wild and crazy, and then they will involve someone else in it. But everyday risky decisions, they know that the residents are able to make those decisions. And they may say, hey, Betty, but at the end of the day, if Betty says, I want the other piece of cake, they're going to give it to her as well.
Yeah, I think we really, even by starting with the interview process, we're talking about that. And the staff, you find who's really on board and who's really not. Because if they're not on board with culture change, they don't who are on board. And sometimes you just have to use a little bit of common sense, and it goes back to everyone understands that our philosophy is resident choice, and ultimately if they need something, going to their student choice, and ultimately if they need something, going to their supervisor, they can let the resident know why they shouldn't do that, or saying, I need to go get someone, or so on and so forth. But being able to make that decision is key.
Care staff are much happier with being able to let residents do what they want. It makes their lives easier. So if the residents are able to make the choice, they're much happier direct care staff anyway.
And when it comes up, like, directly involving care partners, they get to let them do that, but they'll also let the nurse know. The nurse will let managers know. I mean, we really meet and we talk about it. That way we can make sure that that education is provided, because at any point in time when they live here, they can change their mind. They have the right to do that. So if they didn't have any what would be considered risky decisions when they moved in, and then a few months later they change their mind, I mean, we communicate that amongst all of us. We make sure that we either, one, research it if we don't know, good or bad, then we care plan it. So no matter when it comes up, we really try to approach it the same way.
Okay. Well, I don't have any more questions. Do you, as a team, have anything that you would like to say? Do you, as a team, have anything that you would like to say yet to wrap up the conversations today?
One thing we started to talk about, and I don't think we finished, was all team members having access to contact information. So they obviously the information to provide the best care for them, but we do have notebooks on the neighborhood that have resident stay sheets, so they're able to access those. And if the resident's needing more socks, they're empowered to call the family and say, hey, I was getting your mom ready this morning. Noticed she doesn't have any socks, or this, that, or the other. They're empowered to call the families, and families actually appreciate that and want to hear from the person caring for them, and they want to hear it as soon as possible. So as soon as they're missing socks, don't pass it on to someone else to pass on to someone else, because it may take a week before that resident has socks. Just take care of it right then, and it also builds that connection with the family, that they know you're really caring for their loved one and want. So that contact information is accessible to any staff at any time on the neighborhood.
At the end of the day, no one wants to live in a nursing home. However, it's inevitable. So if you're able to know that moving into the nursing home, the only thing that changes is your address, it makes it a whole lot easier.
And with Peak, being a Peak mentor, we welcome people anytime to come here or use their tools. We do have the Gertie department, so education is important. Sending people to classes and things like that is really what gets your journey started and continuing to grow.
Okay, great, thanks. You want to give? Okay, great, thanks. You want to give the people on the call an email address or a phone number if they would like to contact you?
Sure. My email address is Belinda, BELINDAV @gerti.org, and our main number is 913-477-8242.
And you can always check out our website or our Facebook page, things like that. There's contact information on there.
Yeah, our Facebook page and website have all of the listings of offerings, and then the Evergreen Facebook page has a lot of pictures from cool activities they've done and lots of fun ideas.
Okay, well, I sure would like to thank you and your team for sharing with us today, and for sharing your contact information. And those on the call, I would encourage you to reach out to them for resources. They've done a lot of work, a lot of policies, and have a lot of experience that they could share with you. So please feel free to do